Well, welcome back. A federal judge has now set a trial date for Donald Trump as he stands accused of trying to overturn the election result in the state of Georgia. The former president will appear in court as a criminal defendant in March 2024. The criminal trial doesn't seem to be impacting his popularity, though. Since the release of that infamous mugshot, his campaign claims to have made over £7 million in donations.
Now, some of that money is thought to have been raised by the mugshot merchandise because, as Nicola was saying, it was extraordinary that in that short time, they then put into the online store things like T-shirts, mugs, all those kind of stuff with his face splattered all over it. So is he simply cashing in on the controversy? That's the big question, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
Joining us in the studio now is American political commentator Erich McElroy.
Hello.
Hi.
And we're also joined by American lawyer Alan Dershowitz. Right, well, let's start with you, if I may, Erich. Trump, this is extraordinary. I've been talking about it when I've been doing the Weekend Breakfast show, and actually this whole the way that he appeared, the scowling face, there is no doubt in my mind he'd practiced this. Yeah. And actually, the parallels with the poster of Uncle Sam, I don't know if you've thought about that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fact is your country needs you. This is carefully choreographed. Yeah. And as we were saying, he's raised over £7 million. This is an extraordinary case.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's practiced it definitely because it's kind of the look that he had when he was doing The Apprentice with the You're Fired. A lot of people have compared him to Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I think that's a more apt comparison there. Probably. But he's definitely taking advantage of this. And his supporters are piggybacking off the back of it, and that they were taking a template and recreating the mugshot. So his supporters are putting themselves in a mugshot as well to say they're aligned with him.
And I wouldn't mind betting that even people who aren't supporting Trump are going to be cashing in on this and buying the T-shirts, because I'm not a Trump fan, admittedly. But, you know, it's sort of, I guess, from my perspective, is one of those things where you think he wouldn't be proud of it. Yeah. You know, I'd like to wear a mugshot of somebody who I dislike on a T-shirt. But then, of course, people are ultimately feeding into his own campaign money. He's raised almost $20 million in 3 weeks since his indictments in Georgia and the Capitol riot cases.
Well, he needs that to pay for all of his lawyers, although he doesn't often pay his lawyers, so whether they'll see any of that money is another question.
Can we just bring in Alan here? Alan, just in terms of what we were talking about, Trump not only has made money off this, it's also featuring on the front page of his website. And I quote, "At the notorious violent jail in Georgia, I was arrested despite having committed no crime. It's a travesty of justice. It's election interference. I will never surrender our mission to save America." This is clickbait. And clearly, what I find fascinating about this is that when you look at the polls, his poll ratings are going up. A couple of days ago, he stood at 52%. He's now at 58%. This means middle America is getting behind Trump.
Well, I don't think they're getting behind Trump. I think they're getting upset at the way in which ambitious prosecutors are going after him unfairly. For example, there are now 3 trials scheduled for March of this coming year, and nobody can be in 3 places at the same time. Look, I'm an anti-Trump person. I don't want him to be president. I don't want him to have yet another term. I want to see the Democrats elected to office. But I care deeply about due process, fairness, and the Constitution, and so do many Americans. And these ambitious prosecutors may well be driving Trump to a victory that he doesn't otherwise deserve. There are many people who are saying, oh, my God, Trump's bad. But what's happening to our Constitution on behalf of these woke leftists is even worse. And so we're going to file a protest vote against these false prosecutions or these exaggerated prosecutions. And we're going to vote for Trump holding our nose. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Trump is resoundingly defeated in a fair and open election. But these unfair tactics, trying to schedule trials within a few months of the most complicated indictment, never in the history of America, have trials been conducted so quickly in so complex a matter. Here you have a case where we're talking about millions of pages of documents in D.C. In Georgia, 19 defendants, and the prosecutor has said that she wants to bring this case to trial in 6 months with all the defendants together. It's a lie. It's impossible.
But Alan,
it can't happen. You can't have a fair trial. And today the judge made a terrible constitutional mistake. she confused the defendant's right to a speedy trial with somehow the government's right to a speedy trial. And she said the public has an interest in a speedy trial. No, they don't. The public has an interest only in a fair trial, no matter how long it takes.
But Alan, this has clearly been quite beneficial for Trump, as we were just saying, in the polls. And yet so many are saying it was politically motivated by the Democrats. How can both of those things be true at the same time?
Well, they can be, because I think the Democrats want to see him nominated. They think they have a better chance of beating him, but then they want to see him defeated in the general election. They're playing with fire, because when polls go up among Republicans and independents, those polls may get reflected ultimately in the general election. So they're playing with fire, and it's unfair to those of us Americans who care deeply both about the legal system and who don't want Trump to be elected president. I'm in that category of people, and there are, I think, considerable number of others who don't want Trump elected, but they don't want the Constitution of the United States destroyed in the process. We hope that simply having a fair election will end his career, and he'll go back to real estate and leave the rest of the country alone and let them be governed by people who are far better for America and for the world.
I mean, it's an absolutely fascinating point. Let me put that to you, if I may. The fact is that actually, are the Democrats playing a very dangerous game here? Because it seems to me that all they're doing is empowering Trump. You can see that. And I lived in the States for a long time. You've got those bi-coastal regions that think in one way, and you've got Middle America thinking a completely different way. Middle America is loving Donald Trump. And actually, could this not backfire on the Democrats?
Well, a lot of his defenders say, well, we should let the voters decide. Well, we let the voters decide in 2020. Trump lost that election and has spent all of this time contesting it, and in my view, tried to overthrow the results. So we had an election. He didn't view those results. He never admits when he loses. Does it benefit the Democrats? I can say as a Democrat, I want to see justice done. I don't want to see any risk of him being elected again, and I don't think that this has been done as some cynical ploy because they think he's the
But do you think they've made a mistake? The fact is that interview with Tucker Carlson was seen by so many more people than were watching the Republican debate. So it seems to me the Democrats have actually fallen into a massive trap of their own making.
But watching that video, and I'm one of those people that watched that video of Donald Trump, he spent a lot of time talking about water pressure and how many people died building the Panama Canal because of mosquito bites. So people worry about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Watch that video.
Well, there's another very interesting point here, which is Biden young enough, well enough to stand again? Now, or is this an incredibly clever game by the Democrats? So they make sure that Trump runs and they substitute with someone else.
I mean, that is a level of shell game and things happening that it just seems impossible. Joe Biden is on track to be nominated for the Democrats, and that's what I think is going to happen.
Do you? Can he win?
Well, I hope that he does. I mean, he does have a really good record to run on. He's done well with actually passing something called Infrastructure Week, which Donald Trump teased for 4 years, and other things that have done. The economy is turning around. There's good things happening.
And do you agree with Alan when he says that these, all of these trials are going to be scheduled at the same time intentionally? Or do you think that this is due process and it just so happens that, things have had to take this amount of time before coming into action?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't. Well, I mean, maybe Donald Trump should have done fewer crimes, and maybe he would have had fewer trials.
Quite.
But I don't know how it works if they can coordinate the scheduling of it. It seems like they're going to have to. Traditionally, the feds take precedent over state prosecution.
Yeah.
So at some point, they may have to work these things.
And Alan, if I may bring you in here, just in terms of how this plays out, it's emboldening Trump, isn't it? America, and it seems to me, having lived there, it's very much two countries. You've got the bi-coastal regions that think one way. You've got Middle America that thinks the other. And the more that Trump is seen to be browbeaten by the state, by essentially the way that the United States work, the more his popularity goes up. Do you think this will backfire and actually Trump may well end up as the next US president?
It's very possible, and we're leaving out one element in the equation, and that is both President Biden and his son Hunter Biden. This election is going to be about who's the worst criminal, Donald Trump or the Biden family. I believe there will be a special prosecutor appointed to investigate not only Hunter Biden, but Joe Biden as well. There's already a special prosecutor on the classified material, but that's going nowhere. But there will be a special prosecutor appointed to look into Burisma, to look into the $1 billion that was sent on condition that the investigator was fired. Those are serious charges. I don't believe them, and I'm still going to vote for Joe Biden. But those are issues that a lot of Americans care about. And when you hear about those unresolved issues directed not only against Hunter Biden, but Joe Biden, a lot of Americans will say, gee, you know, we have a choice between basically two criminals, and maybe the Bidens are worse. I don't think so.
So
but
that's
I think
the
a lot
point,
of
Alan.
Americans may conclude that.
Alan, isn't that the point? That out of 300 million people, the best you can do is Trump and Biden? Seriously?
It's terrible. It's awful. And look, you know, the British haven't distinguished themselves recently either in terms of candidates. I think it's a problem in the world. I think we're seeing a tremendous lack of leadership around the free world, the democratic world. We have seen so many problems. Obviously, forget about Russia and Ukraine. Look what's going on in Spain now. Look what's going on in Italy. Look what's going on in France with riots and demonstrations. We are in a crisis of our own making. The difference between now and the 1930s is in the 1930s, there was a good reason. It was communism versus fascism, depression. Life is pretty good in the world today, and we're falling apart. And we're producing leaders like the leaders who are running against each other in the United States and some of the other countries. I think the public has the right to expect better and more, and we're not getting it.
And very quickly, Eric, I have to give you the final word. Would you agree? Is this the best you can get?
I think that just the risk of changing horses midstream, and an incumbent president has a much better chance of winning than somebody brand new, and that's what the bet that they've made.
It is certainly indeed. Thank you very much indeed to Erich McElroy and also Alan Dershowitz.